Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ballhawk Sports Podcast. Today we have another episode on the NFL offseason. I'm going to dig into my draft big board, but first I want to say that we are starting pro days. They've begun for a bunch of colleges across the country. Some things that you want to look out for in these pro days are it's a chance for the draft eligible players to show what they're made of in their most comfortable environment. What that really means is that they're probably going to look as best as they possibly can. Quarterbacks and receivers, running backs and tight ends, they're all very comfortable with themselves. Everyone out there is using coaches that they've worked with for the last, 3-4 years. They're at their college fields where they've been practicing all year, or the last few years. It doesn't get any more comfortable than that. So a lot of players are going to look good. They're going to run well, catch well, play well, and show out for everyone. I'm not typically see a lot of negative stories come out of pro days, so nothing really wrong with that. Nothing really to see. I am looking forward to see the top players that sat out of the combine, how they perform, with their athletic testing drills, just how fluid they look in regular drills. But really, this is all meant to be taken with a grain of salt. It's controlled conditions with familiar people around. They're meant to look good, and they're going to look good. So that's the wrap up on the pro days. Let's get right into my draft big board. Now, I did make it 100 people long. We'll see how many I get into. But this will all lead into next week's episode where I do my first mock draft. But let's start off at the top with my number one prospect this year. Actually, the prospects this year are a little underwhelming. I think in other years, specifically last year, you're probably looking at maybe one of these guys being a top 5 pick. Probably even then, not really. It's a class of depth. It's a class of a lot of interior skill. It's really a trenches running backs class. Front 7 on defense. Interior defensive linemen are particularly strong. Offensive line's pretty good. Running backs are really good. So that's what we're looking for, and it's reflected in the rankings as well. But starting off at number 1, I have Travis Hunter, cornerback wide receiver from Colorado. I do expect him to play cornerback with maybe a package, 10-12 plays in there for him on offense. It was clear if you go back and look at his film from Colorado that he was a defensive player that basically played one position on offense. You didn't see him moving around a lot. You saw him doing the one position. So if he was the X receiver, he was just the X receiver. That was all he did. He wasn't one of the guys that was moving around. Not that I want to say, because I haven't talked to him and I haven't done enough research in his interviews and stuff like that to see, but it really looks like from the film his offensive tape is very singular. A lot of his plays are made off screen routes. A lot of them are simple go routes, back shoulder fades, curls. There's not a lot of variety, and I think it's because he's a corner first. He has top of the line corners. I think he's the best corner to come out of the draft since Sauce Gardner. And he'll get drafted up there, probably top 3. There's always the possibility that the quarterbacks mess that up. But I think that as a corner, he projects incredibly well. His playmaking skills on defense is something to dream on. Obviously, with his experience at receiver, that side of things is going to be really good. He should be able to make plays on the ball. The one question I do have about him is his ability to stick his nose in there in the run game. But that's not the end of the world by any means. If I have a great cover corner who's not the most willing tackler, I can take that. I can accept that. That's not a big deal whatsoever. But moving on to number 2, I have Abdul Carter, the edge rusher from Penn State. Now, I will say the injury has me slightly concerned. It's nice that he's able to push through it, not have needed surgery. He should be ready for training camp, and the season shouldn't affect him whatsoever. But you still don't like seeing guys get hurt at all. It didn't affect his draft stock to me. I had him and Hunter 1-2 after the season ended. So, that didn't affect anything. What does affect things for me is I think that he is a lot more developed as a pass rusher than as a run blocker or as a run defender. Nothing wrong with that. A lot of guys coming out of college are more developed in one side than the other. But I think, I don't see him as like a Myles Garrett type or even like an Aiden Hutchinson type coming out. I don't think he's that polished. I don't think he's going to be that dominant. Realistically, depending on where he ends up, I think he works better as a wide 7 tech. I mean, he could probably be a 5 tech, but I wouldn't put him in there consistently, especially in the run game. I think he'll get dominated a little bit. He's very athletic. He wins with speed and athleticism off the edge. And I think he'll continue to develop as a pass rusher, and he'll be one of the better bets at the top of the draft to produce immediately and consistently. Going on to the third best prospect that I have Ashton Jeanty, running back from Boise State. Now, this is not similar in profile because the last running back to go top 5 was Saquon Barkley. And I think that Saquon Barkley's athletic profile is a lot better than Jeanty's, but Jeanty's stats and his accomplishments speak for themselves. I mean, he should have won the Heisman this past year, I believe. But either way, what he did at Boise State was really impressive. I mean, they would load up boxes on him, and he would still bust out of there. Power runner, 1 cut back. He's got game speed. He's got game ability and agility, which some worry. I don't think that he would have tested great. Probably ran a 4.4 with the average to slightly above average agility grade scores, and probably not amazing vertical numbers. But that's not a problem. I see him being very successful if he's put in the right system, and if he's not, he'll be successful enough. I don't expect him to go top 5, but I expect him to go up there. And because this class is more deep than it is top heavy, I have him sitting there at 3. At 4, I have interior defensive lineman Mason Graham from Michigan. Now, he is a full 3-down lineman, 3 tech, can play some 5 if you need to, could even play some 1 tech if you need to. Not the prototypical size you want in a nose tackle, that's why he's better as a 3 tech, but, a lot of skills in the run game and in the pass game as well, as he wasn't a guy coming off the field at all from Michigan this past year or in years prior. I expect some guys to pass on him just because he is an interior guy. We'll see how far he ends up falling. I think he's one of the guys at the top here that could end up going later than I'm expecting, just because interior defensive linemen aren't valued the same way as edge rushers specifically in that field. But just look back. Aaron Donald was 11th drafted overall, I believe. Dexter Lawrence went mid-first, 15th, 16th, and he's the best interior defensive lineman right now. So it's not a position that gets valued well. You can even see that in the contracts that are given out to interior defensive linemen. They're not as big as other positions get. So nothing wrong with that, but I do have him here as the 4th best player in this draft right now. Coming in at number 5, I have Tyler Warren, tight end from Penn State. He is an athletic marvel for tight ends. He profiles similar to Brock Bowers in size and speed. I do think that Bowers was a better prospect. I think that he's the best. Bowers was the best tight end prospect to come out in the league since like I can't even remember. I mean, you're talking like early 2000s type of player that Bowers was coming into the draft. But Warren is a playmaker. You know, he's a guy going to get you some yards after a catch, similar to Bowers. He'll make contested catches over the middle. He is more of a receiving threat than a run blocker. I wouldn't expect him to be mauling people in the way that like a Rob Gronkowski would. But I think that he can develop into that. You know, he's got good size. He's only 6'3", which is a little bit short for a prototypical tight end. But with the way that offenses have been going recently, that's not a problem. And I expect him to, if he doesn't go top 10, he'll go shortly after. But yeah, I have him at number 5. And at number 6 and 7, I have two cornerbacks, kind of interchangeable. I do have my preference. My preference is Will Johnson, the cornerback from Michigan, over Jahdae Barron, the cornerback from Texas. And I will say Barron had the better year last year. I believe he won the Best DB award in college. He had a great year, was able to rise his stock. Some good showings at the combine and in the pre-draft process so far have bumped him up as well. But I do still think that Will Johnson is the better cornerback. You know, Will Johnson is the physical man coverage guy, whereas Jahdae Barron is more of the off coverage zone guy. And the bigger playmaking numbers are going to happen from Barron just because of how he plays, whereas Johnson's more likely to just wipe out the guy, similar to, if you can remember, Darrelle Revis, very similar to that. Moving on to number 8, I have Tetairoa McMillan, wide receiver from Arizona. Now, a lot of people are a little down on him after a underwhelming season coming into the season. McMillan was easily rated as the best receiver coming out, possible top 5 prospect. Getting comparisons to previous receivers that have gone that high, like Ja'Marr Chase. I don't view him in that same way. I don't think that his athletic profile is anything similar to that. I think of him more as like an Anquan Boldin type of receiver. Good size, great at contested catches, above average route runner. And part of the reason that I have him this high is that he did prove it with not a great quarterback in Arizona. And he did prove it over multiple years. It's not like, he had a 1 year and was going in. Like, he had a great year 2 seasons ago and then just wasn't really able to follow it up in the way that people wanted. But I do still have him here as a top 10 prospect. Moving on to number 9, I have Will Campbell, the offensive tackle from LSU. Now, I do consider him an offensive tackle. There's been some conversations leading into the combine that he would not be able to stick at tackle due to some concerns with his size. I think that he tested out well there. He showed fluidity in the drills, and he showed that he has the athleticism to stay out there despite some preconceived notions about his size. Most likely sticking at left tackle. I think that he has the ability to do that despite being slightly undersized. Could bump over to right tackle, could bump into left guard if he needed to. But I see him as a tackle, and I expect him to be drafted and play at that level. Moving on to the next 3, 10, 11, and 12 ranked prospects are all edge rushers. I've gone back and forth on all 3 of these players and where I think that I should put them. But in reviewing for putting together this draft board, I have decided to kind of keep them together. I think that was just, they all have their different positives that I'll get into in a second. But I was just looking at how the board shook out. I was like, okay, I think that they're all roughly in the same area. But we're going to start off at number 10. I have edge rusher Jalen Walker from Georgia. He's one of the guys that the draft experts like a lot more than the analytics do. If you were to go to PFF and look at their rankings, he's not as high as some other people do have him. I believe, I could be mistaken here, but I believe that he was not an every down player for Georgia, but that's also just how Georgia runs things. They have a lot of talent on their D line, especially, and at edge rusher, so they just rotate their guys in to keep them fresh. I don't bang on Walker for that. He also did play some off-ball linebacker, which is part of the reason why I have him above the next two edge rushers on the list here. But just a very versatile player, good pass rusher, decent against the run, and definitely offers some versatility for whoever does end up drafting him. Now, at 11, I have James Pierce Jr., the edge rusher from Tennessee. Another one of those guys that came into this past season, with a lot of expectations and didn't exactly play up to them. Still had a good year with Tennessee. I still see good promise, but he did fall a little bit to where I had him in the beginning of the year, fitting in here at number 11. Similar to Carter, much more of a pass rusher. He's more advanced as a pass rusher than he is as a run defender. Nothing wrong with that. He can definitely develop it. And he showed the athletic profile at the combine, running the best 40 time out of any of them, that he really beats you with speed off the edge, and that's going to be a big boost to whoever ends up drafting him. At 12, I have Mike Green, the edge rusher from Marshall. Kind of a good combination of Walker and Pierce. He's going to beat you more with a little bit of power, not as much with speed. He's got good athleticism. He has good speed, don't get me wrong, but a more well-rounded game, which is good for some teams, but I know a lot of teams, especially up higher in the draft, need pass rushing ability, and he's not going to be dominant rushing the passer off the get-go. That's part of what he needs to develop, but he'll be better against the run, better at setting the edge, which some teams will prefer. Coming in at number 13, I have Armand Membu, the offensive tackle from Missouri. Now, he is one of the guys that has shot up in my rankings, probably a decent amount since the pre-draft process has started and the season has ended. He has proven to people that he can stick at tackle, similar to Campbell. He measured in well at the combine and then showed to be very good in the drills. Big athletic freak. I know there's a lot of athletic freaks in the offensive line in general this year, or coming into this year for the draft. And he is one of them, and I expect a team to take him and dream on his athletic profile, and keep him at tackle. Probably better fit at right tackle, I would say. A team with the more established left tackle sliding him over to the right side, I think will be best for him. But I don't doubt his abilities to be on the left side whatsoever. Moving on to number 14, I have Emeka Egbuka, the wide receiver from Ohio State. Similar to McMillan with a little bit of less size. Definitely top-tier route runner. A little bit more speed than McMillan has. But as the number 2 behind the great Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State, put up good numbers, helping them get to the national championship and win. Good all-around receiver, but nothing that really blows me away. I don't think that he's going to step in there and be a number 1 for anyone. But if you have someone to complement him, a deep threat, preferably, that'll be great for his development and his ability to make a bigger impact right out the gate. Now at 15, I have Cam Ward, quarterback from Miami. Both of the quarterbacks that I believe will go at the top of the draft, I had trouble putting and finding out where I wanted to put him in the rankings. I settled on Ward here. I do like Ward. I think one of the very popular conversations, or one of the conversations that should be popular about the quarterbacks this year, is how they would rank in other years. I think that's a much better way of evaluating them than against this year's class, because it is such an underwhelming quarterback class. But if you go back to even just last year, where there was a lot of quarterbacks came out and got drafted high and deserved to get drafted high. You had Williams go number 1. You had Daniels go 2. You had Penix and McCarthy and Nix all go in the top 12 picks there. I mean, that's a lot of quarterbacks to go early. I do think that Ward would have fallen in if we knew what we knew about Ward now. Probably in the Penix, McCarthy, Nix range. I like Nix coming out last year, but I do think that he was someone that everyone viewed as like, you need to have the right system for him, and I think that he went to the right system, obviously as his success had proven. But I think of Cam Ward similarly to how I thought of J.J. McCarthy last year, with a little bit more battle-tested, as J.J. McCarthy kind of just got to, not that this is a bad thing, but he kind of got to coast at Michigan, wasn't really trusted to do a lot more than he needed to, or they knew that he could do, whereas Cam Ward got to play superhero. And I think that's one of the things that will help him and his development, as he will be expected to start quickly at the NFL level. I do have him as the top quarterback this year. But going on to number 16, I have offensive tackle Kelvin Banks Jr. out of Texas. I do think that he is a prototypical left tackle. A little bit more technique would be nice from him. But still, of the tackles, I think that he can stick on the left side. I think there's no question about him being a tackle whatsoever. Good power, good base. Just a little bit quicker out of his stance to start. But he should be a good, solid left tackle for whoever ends up taking him. And at number 17, I have Mikael Williams, edge rusher from Georgia. Now, he suffers from the same thing that Walker suffers from, in the fact that he was rotated a little bit, but a better pass rusher than Walker, and he probably was the best exterior pass rusher on that Georgia team last year. Good speed, good athleticism, just a little bit less polished than the guys that I had a little bit higher than him. And at number 18, I have Kenneth Grant, another interior defensive lineman from Michigan. Good technique, good against the run. Not great against the pass, which is why I have him down here a little bit. But definitely, if you're looking for someone to stuff the run, that's going to be your guy. At number 19, I have Jihad Campbell, inside linebacker from Alabama. Really the prototypical inside backer that you want. Good speed, good athleticism. He's not going to blow anyone away. He's not going to be, chasing down Tyreek Hill, but exactly what you need from an inside backer. And I expect some team to see the value in that, similar to how the Lions took Jack Campbell a few years ago, and take him where he deserves to go, and that is in the first round. I'm coming in at number 20. I have Colston Loveland, the tight end from Michigan. He is the best all-around tight end this year. Coming off of an injury, dings him a little bit. Otherwise, he probably would be higher, maybe even up there with Warren. But someone will roll the dice on him. I mean, he's expected to be ready by training camp. Not having any issues there. And just an overall really good prospect, and he should be a really good player at the tight end position for whoever ends up taking him. Coming at number 21, I have Omarion Hampton, the running back from UNC. Now, I do have him as ranked higher than some of the other guys that I don't know value-wise would be worth it. I don't know if taking him in the first rather than taking someone else in the second or third would be advisable. But someone's going to take him. Someone's going to use him. He'll play well for you. Very good all-around back for UNC. Another one of those guys that, they stacked the box on him, and he still showed out. I think we'd be thinking a lot better of him if Janty didn't have the season that overshadowed Hampton as much as it did. But still, he had a great year, and he should get rewarded by getting drafted in the first round. possibly top 20. He's getting some hype about that. But moving on to number 22, that's Derek Harmon, the interior defensive lineman from Oregon. This is where it gets a little bit tricky. The interior defensive linemen around here all grade out pretty similarly, and it's going to all be about preference. I mean, between Grant, who is a little bit higher because he has a little bit more polish in my mind, to Harmon now to, I mean, we'll get to Alexander and some of the other guys, Walter Nolan, some of the guys like that. But I project him to be a little bit better against the pass. That's why I have him up here at 22. A little bit worse against the run, but still good all around. But moving on to 23, I have Matthew Golden, wide receiver from Texas. Really liked seeing him go out and compete at the combine and show why he deserves to possibly be the first receiver drafted. And I am starting to see some mock drafts out there like buy that hype and have him be the first wide receiver drafted. I still think that he lacks polish, something pretty common with the Texas receivers coming out. They got by on their athleticism and not their route running, something that I don't know if they'll be able to make translate well. If you think back to Xavier Worthy last year, I think if you go back and look at the interviews or just listen to them talk about Worthy, they knew what they were getting, and that was not a receiver. That was a guy that knew that he was faster than everyone else and that needed to develop. I see similar characteristics with Golden. I think that you need to develop him as a receiver and a full route runner. Otherwise, you're gonna end up drafting John Ross. I know that sounds a little harsh, but that's what he is. But at number 24, another offensive tackle, Josh Simmons, Ohio State. If he did compete in the drills at the combine, he would have shown how much of an athletic freak he is. But he did not, so that was not able to be on display. I see a lot of like Terran Armstead's profile in Simmons, and being able to dream on that, someone will take advantage of that and hope they can get something similar to what Armstead was able to provide, or has been able to provide in his very good career. Moving on to 25, this is going to be a surprise to some people that have seen other big boards, but I have Shavon Ravel Jr., the cornerback from Eastern Carolina. Now, he is injured, and that does hurt him a little bit, but I think, as was shown last year with Cooper DeJean falling because he was injured, I don't think that people should put as much of a value on not being able to participate in the pre-draft process. I know that leaves a lot to be desired, but I think that tape matters more anyway. So why ding someone just because they got hurt, but they're supposed to be healthy for the start of the season? It's not like Ravel is not expected to miss training camp. He's not expected to miss any of the season. So why does it matter that he just can't run on air? I don't think it matters. I also don't think if he ran a 4.4 or a 4.5 that it would change how I feel about him. Good press man corner. I think that he's a great player, and he'll get healthy and show people. Not as much of an athletic freak as Cooper DeJean was coming out, but I think that he will prove that when he falls and gets drafted somewhere, that he has the playmaking ability and the just skill level to be able to be successful despite his injury, keeping him out of the draft process. Coming in at number 26 is Luther Burden III, wide receiver from Missouri. And he's one of the guys that has fallen the most out of the gate. I mean, he was up there as a top 10 prospect with McMillan prior to the season. He showed a lack of ability to separate which is interesting for a largely slot guy who was able to do it the previous year, to come out this year, and I don't know if he was being keyed on. I don't know if people saw something in his film that was like, oh, well, we can exploit that, but not a good sign. And even though I do have him at 26, I know a lot of people have him lower, and I am getting the feeling that he is falling to the second round, or that he will fall to the second round of the draft now, which I think will be good. You know, some team in the second round will get a player that is worth a first round pick at second round value, which is good, especially in a draft like this, where there's not a lot of players that are going to fall like that because there's just not a lot of first round grade guys. But speaking of which, number 27, Malachi Starks, the safety from Georgia, similar situation, coverage guy, didn't make as much plays, didn't play as well this past season as he did the prior season. I think if he had came out the prior season, you're talking about him being like a Jamal Adams level of draft stock. But unfortunately, you can only come out when you can come out, and he came out after this season when it was not his best year. He also didn't grade out entirely well athletically, which is not uncommon for safeties. So I don't expect it to matter when it comes to game day that he didn't test out well, which is why I don't put much stock in the testing. But I did not like that he digressed in college. Some of these big programs, I am weary of the fact that these college coaches are getting the most out of the player, and there's not room to grow. That's one of the biggest problems that I had with Nick Saban prospects coming out when he was the Alabama coach, is that Saban was such a good coach. He got the players, like he got the most out of the players that he had in college. So when they came to the pros, they were already as good as they were ever going to be. And you see that in the numerous busts that have come out of Alabama over the last, 10, 15 years that he was the head coach there. But Malachi Starks, especially as a safety, he shouldn't have as much problems. Just put him deep or give him half the field and watch him play. I don't think it's going to be an issue. Coming in at 28, I have Shamar Stewart, the edge rusher from Texas A&M. Very raw. He was one of the guys that, he was kind of a tweener coming into the draft process. People didn't really know where to put him. He played edge. He bounced inside a little bit. He was listed at like 295, which is really heavy for an edge rusher, even at 6'5", 6'6". But he did show up to the combine at like 265. So he did lose all that weight, which is really good to see, and he showed out in the athletic drills. So it really showed whether he was actually that weight or not coming into the season. It really showed that he could put in the work and has the athletic ability to be an edge rusher or not be forced inside, which helps his draft stock. But still raw at Texas A&M, similar to Nick Scorton, who we'll get here in a second. But he's stout. He should be able to set the edge well, at very least early on. But his pass rushing is very raw, so that will need to be developed. Number 29, I have Darius Alexander, the interior defensive lineman from Toledo. Now, small school syndrome here, dominant, but didn't play top-level competition. You never know how that really translates. He tested well. His tape obviously is good. Fringe first-round guy. Nothing. I don't think there's anything really more to say about that. At 30, we do have Nick Scorton, the edge rusher from Texas A&M. Beats you with speed and athleticism off the edge. A clear edge rusher as compared to his teammate and Stewart. And I think someone at the end of the first will take a shot in him. Appreciate getting the extra year of control, potentially. But some boomer bust here, as he is more projection than actual finished product at this point. Coming in at 31, I have Gray Zabel, the offensive tackle from North Dakota State University, D2 school. For those of you that know, this is the school that Carson Wentz went to before he was drafted at number 2. I do question whether his skills set will immediately translate. It has been reported that he's looked good in drills and in games. I believe that he was in the Senior Bowl or one of those postseason bowls that they do for draft eligible seniors. So that's good to know. He tested out well. He showed off in drills. He's a guy that can stick on the left. He could play right tackle. I don't think he'll need to bounce inside either, which is a big question for actually a lot of these tackles coming out. But it's good, solid tackle. Someone will take him at the end of the first. Those playoff teams could always use extra pass blocking. And at number 32, I have Trey Amos, cornerback from Ole Miss. Kind of a theme for me, I guess, in this draft. These bigger physical man coverage corners are to my liking. There is a little bit more of like Richard Sherman to his game where he could also work in a cover 3 system. Got the build and the ability to do that. But yeah, similar but less polished to or less shown skill to Ravel. So yeah, I have him there at 32. At 33, I have Landon Jackson, edge rusher from Arkansas. He is definitely more projection than anything else. One of the feel-good stories coming out of the combine was watching his progression. They have an old video from when he was, I believe he was 18, and going into college, doing a bag drill, looking incredibly stiff, and then doing the bag drill at the combine, just looking so fluid and so strong. Definitely one of the guys that are going to beat you with a bull rush and some strength other than some speed, but he did still test out well. And so I think that he'll be able to come into his own quicker than some of the other guys with his good technique and his strength. I think that'll be a good boon to him when he gets drafted and has to play. Coming at 34, I have Josh Connerly Jr., the offensive tackle from Oregon. Definitely going to be sticking at tackle. Looks like a prototypical left tackle, just a little bit raw in his abilities. Got exposed a little bit with speed off the edge, as bigger guys typically do. Just refine the technique. Have him take a better jab step, and he should be plenty valuable for whoever ends up taking him. Coming in at 35, I have Benjamin Morrison, cornerback from Notre Dame. Similar to Trey Amos in how he looks and feels. A little bit less polished. I have him a little bit lower. But just another physical press man corner that I'm sure everyone will be happy to have. And coming at 36, I do finally have Shedeur Sanders, quarterback from Colorado. I see so much of Mac Jones in him that I don't trust it. Truthfully. That's how I feel. Pretty accurate. Doesn't have top-end arm strength. Doesn't have top-end speed or athleticism. Average arm strength, average athleticism. One of the things you do like is that you saw him compete at Colorado. You saw him compete at Jackson State as well. He took his hits, especially 2 years ago. He got destroyed in the pocket, still kept coming out there. Never blamed his guys. You like to see that. Very positive things about him as a leader. Some mental question marks have come about him and his makeup. He's Deion's son. I can't blame him for having some bravado. You just hope that it doesn't get to a point where teams think they can't work with him, or that there's you can't be brazen about it. Is basically what I'm trying to say. And it's the reports are scarce on it. I mean, a little bit coming out of the combine was coming out about his character but it really hasn't continued to the point where I'm like, this is bad. But I just don't honestly like if we take what we did with Ward, the same exercise, and say, okay, well, last year's draft class, where do I put him? I put him in the second round. I don't take him in the first round. I don't take him up there with everyone else. I just don't. I would rather try to develop J.J. McCarthy or Cam Ward, or make my system fit Bo Nix, or develop Michael Penix than him. I think that there's a very real possibility that he's shown you exactly what he is as a quarterback, and that's that. Similar to Mac Jones coming out a few years ago, where it could be like, yeah, he has a good season or two, the league figures him out, and that's all he is. And whoever takes him is drafting another quarterback in the first round in a few years. That's not really what you want. It's unfortunate because so many teams need a quarterback nowadays. And with the way the league is shaped out, you need a top-end quarterback too. It's not even like you can just roll a guy out there. You need a guy at the top end, otherwise you're not going to be able to compete really. But moving on to 37, I have Nick Emmanwori, the safety from South Carolina. His stock is getting boosted by the fact that he had the single best athletic score combine since like 1999. He is the best one-of-one safety athletically to come out and come through the combine since the turn of the century. A team will fall in love with that athletic ability and think that they can mold it. Now, I say mold it, and I mean it. He was raw. He doesn't have the best technique. He doesn't have the best... he hasn't shown the best playmaking ability. Doesn't mean it's not there. It just hasn't happened. So it'll be really interesting to see how that shakes out. But someone is going to fall in love with the athletic profile there and take him beyond where he would have gone had he not been a one-of-one guy athletically. Real quick, because I don't want to spend too much time on the next handful of players. At 38, I have Walter Nolan, defensive tackle from Ole Miss. 39 is Tyler Booker, guard from Alabama. 40 is Maxwell Hairston, the cornerback from Kentucky. Opposite stories in the combine between Booker and Hairston. Hairston performed really well. Booker didn't have the best athletic profile. Now, for a guard, doesn't really matter. He's going to maul people. He's got a lot of strength. But definitely think limited him to a power offensive scheme. Not a bad thing, but some teams probably dropped him on their board because of that. And Maxwell Hairston, blazing speed, decent size, showed really good fluidity in the drills, the on-field drills. Definitely helped his draft stock. Elijah Arroyo, tight end from Miami, at 41. He was not expected to come out this year. It was a surprise that he declared. I do see him as a Tyler Warren light, whereas he showed the ability to be a playmaker, but probably could have, if he wanted to be a first-round player, obviously, clearly he didn't care to because he came out this year, would have benefited from another year of showing it on tape. But have him here at 41. At 42, I have Xavier Watts, safety from North Carolina, pure cover guy. Deep middle, deep half, similar to Starks. It'll be good for him. That's where he fits. TJ Sanders, defensive tackle, interior defensive lineman from South Carolina. At 44, I have Donovan Azuruka, edge from Boston College. Some experts have him a lot higher. I am not as high on him. I think that he's incredibly raw. But we'll see what happens. He is a guy that could get drafted over where I have him, and I will say good luck to that team. I hope you can develop him. At 45 and 46, I have the Ohio State receivers. I have Jaden Higgins at 45 and Jalen Noel at 46. I think it's a preference on what you want. Higgins is the tall route runner, possession receiver. Noel is the quick, fast slot receiver. But Noel also has the size to move outside. I believe he was measured at 5'11". So really, what do you want? Because they both tested well. Noel tested faster. Higgins jumped higher. So it's a preference thing for what you want for your team. At 47, I have Demetrius Knight Jr. He's a linebacker from South Carolina. Really good player. South Carolina had a lot of good defensive players coming out in this draft. But off-ball linebacker, really good. Might have some issues in coverage, but that could develop. You can hide that. Not a big problem whatsoever. And then I have Alec Ayomanar, wide receiver from Stanford, coming in at 48. At 49, I have Talik Williams, defensive tackle from Ohio State. And at 50, I have Mason Taylor, tight end from LSU. Now that rounds out my top 50. I am going to highlight a couple players in the next 50 that I have before wrapping it up. So I want to start with 51 is Darian Porter, cornerback from Iowa State. I really like his profile and the tape that he has shown. I think in the second round he has good value. Cam Scatabo, running back from Arizona State. I like his tape. He didn't test great, which is fine. I see him as like an Alvin Kamara, another guy who did not test well, but showed that it's hard to quantify playmaking ability, and he has it. And I don't think there's a number that can prove that. At 56, I have Jackson Dart, quarterback from Ole Miss. I like how he looks. I think he's a guy that will benefit from sitting, so I hope a team doesn't reach for him in the first round, or whoever does take him, if it is in the first round, doesn't expect him to start. I hope that he sits. I hope that he gets to learn, and I hope he gets to come out next year as a starter and show people what he's made of. I am a big fan of his. And then at 58 and 59, I have the two running backs from Ohio State. Again, it's a preference thing similar to the Iowa State receivers. You have Henderson, who I had at 58. He is the athletic scat back, and then Judkins is the power bowling ball back. And then moving on, at 60, I have Jack Sawyer, edge from Ohio State. Just an all-around good defensive player. I think he's one of those guys that he'll be like a glue guy. Not the best athletic profile, not the best pass rusher, but he's good against the run. He's a leader, and he's a playmaker at edge rusher, something that you like to see, and I think good value to be had at the bottom of the second, top of the third round. Finishing off the running backs, at 64, I had Caleb Johnson, running back from Iowa. At 66, I had Dylan Simpson, running back from Tennessee. At 67, I have Charles Grant, the offensive tackle from William & Mary. I do have a lot more faith in his abilities than some experts and some sites out there do. But there is a lot of projection in that placement. At 73, I have Tate Ratledge from Georgia. At 74, I have the center from Georgia, Jared Wilson. Both of those guys tested out incredibly well. So they are very athletic. On the interior, I think that's a big plus if you are running a zone scheme, which is the scheme that I do prefer. So I probably have them ranked higher than other people do, just because I think that they would fit what I would want to do with my team better. At 75, I have quarterback Jalen Milroe from Alabama. He is a guy that needs to sit for like 2 years. Maybe he needs to be more accurate. He needs to be more decisive with his plays. He needs to not rely so much on his legs. Now, he did run, I believe it was an unofficial 4.37 second 40, which is great. That's awesome. He's got speed, he's got athleticism. That was why I wanted him to participate in the combine, to show that off to people at least. But he chose not to. He chose to throw. He was average. It was underwhelming. At 78 and 79, I have two guys that have fallen a little bit in Deion Walker, defensive tackle from Kentucky, true nose tackle, run stuffer. People were hoping that he could show some abilities against the pass. He didn't really do that, but someone will still dream on the potential. And then at 79 is Isaiah Bond, receiver from Texas. I like the competitiveness of coming out and saying that he's going to go out there and beat Worthy's speed. I don't like that he ran a 4.4 off of that. So, I don't know. And I also just think, similar to his teammate Golden, you got to develop him as a receiver. So, he didn't show the athletic ability that Golden did. And then he's raw as well as a prospect. So, I have him here at 79. Moving on, I have Will Howard, quarterback from Ohio State, at 87. Another guy that I just kind of see as a backup. I don't see anything very special about him. At 93, I have Harold Fannin Jr., tight end from Bowling Green. A lot of the record books for tight ends have his name on it. But as a prospect, not great. His athletic profile isn't amazing. It might be a situation where he was just better than the competition he was playing at Bowling Green. Nothing wrong with that, but we'll see how he translates. And then we will end it here with Tez Johnson, who I had at 100 from Oregon. Very thin. He came in at like 154, I believe, and then he ran like a 4.5. Like I don't like that whatsoever. He still showed, his tape shows really good that he can play. Devontae Smith is very thin at receiver. I don't think it's a problem. But I do think the problem is if he dropped weight, as some people do, to be able to run at the combine, to then run poorly, makes me wonder if he does play at like 165, 170, 175. How does he run? Because his game tape shows that he runs well. He's a slot receiver, but he still runs well. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. Where he goes, how he ends up playing, and things like that. But there you have it. That's my breakdown of my draft big board. I don't expect it to change much, so I don't know if I'll do another rundown of the big board in general. I do have my mock draft that we'll be doing next week, and I'll probably run through a live mock draft maybe the week before the draft, just to see how I'm feeling and to talk you guys through it without the luxury of having pre-done it and pre-thought it, just how I'm feeling in the moment. But thank you guys for joining me. I hope you enjoyed. Please leave any comments that you have. I'd be happy to talk about it. And I will see you guys next week.